Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Raw Law Unfiltered with your host, the DUI Guy Plus. Today, we have a very, very special treat for you all. As you all know, some of you who follow me on Twitter, I know a lot of you don't have Twitter. If you don't have Twitter, do not get it. It is a crazy cesspool of all sorts of individuals, literally just trying to bite each other's heads off because they're not in the same room, basically. But those of you who do have a Twitter and do follow me on Twitter know that I have I posted a tweet yesterday. Some of my sources revealed that Michelle Dauber, the hopefully soon to be former professor at Stanford University Law School, is finally being investigated for her atrocious, vile conduct towards Twitter users, towards students, hopefully the whole kit and caboodle. And so today, some of you know Claire Best. Claire Best has been on my show a couple of times. She is a very valuable resource that I utilize from time to time. And Claire is also friends with this individual that I'm about to bring on in just a few seconds. His name is Kursat Christoph Pegoz. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He is Turkish, so please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. He went to school in Istanbul and Ankara, which both are in Turkey, and he even studied at University of Southern California, USC in California. He's worked as a translator and interpreter. Now listen to this. He worked at the European Molecular Biology Laboratory in Heidelberg, Germany. Now that sounds like some Breaking Bad shit right there. I swear to God, he might be the new Heisenberg. I don't know. We're about to find out. And then he worked at USC, a couple of law firms, and I think he is the CEO of his own real estate holding company. So the dude's been around. The dude has definitely been around. And of course, his I don't know if this is his primary way of making a living or just kind of a side gig. I'll let him speak for himself. He's definitely done a lot of coverage and has been covered by news organizations such as Fox News, The Hill, NBC, Post Millennial, The Daily Wire, Daily Caller, PJ Media, USA Today, The Associated Press, Taiwan News, Euronews, New Delhi Times, Forbes, the Stanford Daily, Trojan Daily, and more. So without further ado, I bring to you Kursat. How are you, my friend?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing very, very well. So just real briefly, since this is the first time that we are talking, face to face live in a conversation. I don't even know if we engaged prior in tweets or anything, or I don't think we DM'd. Can you tell my audience a little bit about who you are and how do you fit in to this whole Michelle Dauber Stanford investigation, etc.?
Sure, I will be happy to. Thank you so much. So I'm a human rights activist who specializes in men's issues, and I've been doing this for a very long time. I did work in human rights in Turkey, mostly for women and minorities. So I signed the declaration, we will not be a party to this crime, in 2016, even though the signatories have been persecuted by the Turkish government to protest, basically a crackdown against Kurdish citizens of Anatolia. And I also collected signatures for a dissident women politician who was critical of Islamic fundamentalism. I've done a lot of work. I worked as a pro bono teacher for CYDD, which works to eliminate illiteracy among women in rural parts of the country where women are routinely denied access to education. So I've done a lot of human rights activism, but within the United States, most of my human rights activism has been focused on improving the conditions of young men in colleges, because that's where I believe the work is most desperately needed. So just kind of like to summarize the situation, men are a minority in the educational system in the United States and also throughout most of the West. And the percentage of men are actually is declining, and the percentage of women is increasing. So the imbalance is growing like larger and larger. But despite this, educational institutions offer affirmative action for women in school recruitment, in employment, in single sex scholarships, in single sex programs, also in women's centers, medical programs for women, as well as women's studies programs. So with nothing equivalent for the male minority. So I've been challenging this for years, and I've scored some successes against USC, Tulane, Brown University, Yale. Um, so quite a few schools really. With investigations are being launched as we speak. So one of the most recent was against Stanford, which kind of explains, I guess, kind of like my way of segueing into the Michelle Dober topic. So I filed a complaint against Stanford in 2019, sorry. And again, like many other institutions, men are a minority in Stanford, but for
Well,
the
hold on.
female,
So
yes,
let's take a step back. So you filed
sure.
this complaint in 2019. What was it about? Why did you file it? What did it accomplish, if anything, at least in your eyes, maybe not in reality, or maybe in reality? And what did this complaint comprise of? Could you please tell us?
So the complaint challenges, as I mentioned, affirmative action for women in scholarships, in single-sex programs, professional programs. Also, in Stanford has a women's studies program, but nothing equivalent for men. It has a women's center, nothing equivalent for men, etc. So I can send you the complaint. It's like a lot of programs, and I've actually had some support and help from insiders as well. So there were people associated with Stanford who supported the complaint. Uh, there were two male students who filed their own complaints with the Title IX office, and there were three Stanford professors who endorsed the complaint. And my co-complainant for the case is James Moore, who is a USC professor, but who is also a Stanford alumnus. So there were a lot of people affiliated with Stanford who endorsed the complaint. The complaint was accepted for investigation in, well, basically a few months ago, and unfortunately, it was very deficient. So part of the problem is the Department of Education has a agency, sub-agency called the Office for Civil Rights, which oversees these investigations, and it's a
Oh,
very,
really? They believe
yes.
in civil rights all of a sudden, huh? Sorry, please
Um,
continue.
I mean, their version of it, I guess you could put it that way. It's
That's a
it's a
better
very
way to
very
say
biased
it.
agency,
Yeah.
and especially the person who is currently leading the agency is called Catherine Lehman, and I recently published articles just criticizing her record. So Lehman is very very biased in favor of women. She's like a very much a radical feminist like Michelle Dober. So unfortunately, that's the person leading the agency. But my understanding is that there is some resistance from the rank and file attorneys against like layman's agenda. I think the plight of like these young men is finding an audience with some of the attorneys at the regional offices. And there's a mixed record, like because the agency is so partisan. Just to give an example, I did research. I've read actually a lot of resolution letters, like formal decisions by the Office for Civil Rights. It's probably more than a million words. It was like very engrossing work. But I found that male students, well, basically female students, were 24 times more likely to receive favorable resolutions compared to male students when they apply to the Office for Civil Rights. So for every one male student who prevailed with his claims, there were 24 female students who prevailed with their claims. Yes, that's the kind of partisanship that you are dealing with, and it's not for lack of people who complain, because I remember like filing a FOIA request and discovering that hundreds of male students filed Title IX complaints in the sexual harassment category alone, and these complaints were routinely just buried by the Office for Civil Rights. They were dismissed based on various pretexts. And male students who contacted the Office for Civil Rights between 2012 and 2019 had a success rate of only 1.1%. So that's the agency that we are dealing with. And we have made some
Wow.
progress, which I'm going to explain later on.
Hmm.
But those are the odds. So it's not easy filing these complaints. It's like pro bono, so there's no like monetary compensation, and it's also very much an uphill battle, because you're dealing with partisan investigators. And the problem is, so the Office for Civil Rights consists of different sub branches, and one of them is the San Francisco office, which has oversight over Stanford, obvious oversight over the state of California, and it's definitely the most partisan office. Like they have never, between 2012 and 2019, they have never favorably resolved a single complaint from a male student during that time period. So that's the
Wow,
most aggressively hyper partisan civil rights agency within the Department of Education. And
that's
I have a
crazy.
complex history with the office, especially with the San Francisco office, because I did file a complaint during the Obama administration, which was accepted. And it was later upgraded into a class action case because I argued that I wasn't the only male student who was a victim of discrimination, because there were court rulings favorable to male students at the state court level, not the federal court level. But and based on that, the Office for Civil Rights actually granted the argument and accepted a class action case on behalf of male students. So that was one of the earliest cases that began to break the ice and just kind of like start to transform the agency. Um, but what happened later was my allegations were found to be in good faith and objectively reasonable by one federal attorney. But later, her boss, Laura Fire, dismissed the complaint again based on like a very partisan reading,
Hmm.
and she has like all sorts of like conflicts of interest with Gloria Allred. For example, like Gloria Allred will sue Californian schools, often exploiting mentally ill young female accusers, whose stories were not really coherent, were not really credible, but she just kind of like exploited them for money. And the Office for Civil Rights would just fulfill this complaint, just side with Gloria Allred, and then Gloria Allred would sue the colleges in federal court for a lot of money based on what the Office for Civil Rights found. So it's kind of like a scam, really. And I think that's kind of like Claire's description of the whole system is a Ponzi scheme of these so-called victim rights advocates. It's been going on for quite some time. I don't know if we will be able to unravel the whole package, but it's really really bad. But anyway, so after Laura Fire dismissed that complaint, I was really pissed off. So I did something that's sometimes done by Turkish human rights activists. So I went on a hunger strike, and yes,
Whoa.
yes, I went on a hunger strike for almost for 32 days, and I avoided solid food. Yes, I lost a lot of weight. So and I was able
I
to
was not ready for that. I'm not gonna lie.
yes, it's listed on my CV, but I guess it's kind of like a minor detail in all the work that I have done. But I was able to ensure the termination of Laura Fire, so the former regional director, and I was also able to persuade the Department of Education to launch a civil rights investigation against Yale for discrimination against men, which was kind of a big deal. Yes, I can send you, like, I have the medical paperwork from my hunger strike as well. um,
There it is. Please continue. I just
so
wanted to share that because
it's
I have a
just
copy
kind
of
of
it.
like, but it's just kind of like to give you an idea of how much work is necessary to bend this agency towards your will. Because, as I said, they're very partisan. They have like um, they're very certain of their political convictions, and it took a lot of effort. And I'm not the only person who is fighting for this kind of change. There are other activists who are filing similar complaints, who have devoted thousands of hours of pro bono work to transform the agency. But we have luckily made some progress. So, anyway, after the Yale complaint was accepted for investigation, I went public, and there was a lot of publicity because it was unheard of at that time. A Ivy League institution being under investigation for discrimination against men was unheard of. So there was a lot of publicity. Most of it was positive, but there was also some negative publicity as well. And I've learned that journalists can be very perfidious and treacherous sometimes. Like they interview you and they're like very kind, they ask you like very normal questions, and you get the impression that some journalists can be, maybe they're going to be even handed in their coverage, but then they end up with this hit pieces. So I had several experiences like that, especially with an NBC journalist who came visited me in my house, and it all seemed great. Like I did everything I could to accommodate like what she wanted, etc. I presented a lot of documents, like mentioned a lot of things, but she ended up writing like what was very much a hit piece. So some journalists are unfortunately very much acting out of preconceived notions of like political convictions, and they don't really want to give you a fair chance. But overall, I think the press coverage has been mostly positive. And I heard back from a lot of people. I think I may have been in communication with more than 1,000 people who complained about like these programs, who sent supportive messages. So I received a lot of support, and I filed a lot of complaints, often with in collaboration with other people. So I'm a collaborative person in general, and I filed complaints on behalf of other individuals if they wanted to file complaints of their own. And I believe I've written a total of 32 complaints, but the complaints that I file usually challenge a lot of programs. So there's a recent case against Brown University, and Brown has like 22
Hmm.
programs, and their total net worth is like hundreds of millions of dollars, like of
Hmm.
funds that are available to women only, even though women are the majority in educational institutions. So it's really crazy. And the Brown investigation has actually been accepted in full. So all of our allegations have been accepted, which is like great news, including, interestingly, against women's studies. So women's studies are going to be investigated for the first time for bias against men. And it took a lot of legal wrangling to just kind of like reach that position again. And I don't know if the resolution letter is going to be favorable, because the attorneys stressed that just because we are launching this investigation doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a finding in your favor. Although, in generally, in my experience in investigations of this kind, if the initial investigation is open, then the resolution letter is also favorable, because these programs are really discriminatory on their face. So they exclude men, and it's very hard to like present evidence contrary to that obvious fact. So what happens is, if the initial investigation is cleared at the initial stage, then the resolution letter is usually favorable. And to give you an idea, so what happens is, when you file a complaint, first the Department of Education evaluates whether the complaint is legally valid and sound, and that is like surviving a motion to dismiss at the initial
Hmm.
stage. So it's more favorable to the complainant. And then they send you a notification letter if they accept the allegations for investigation. And then what happens is, the investigation basically runs its course, which can take years, of course. And it's really dependent on the personal discretion of the federal officers. So, and there's actually a lot of variation and disagreements between these officers, and even between regional offices, which I will come to in a second. But what happens is, at the end, there's a resolution letter or a dismissal letter, and that's like a jury trial at that stage. That's like at the very end, after everything is done. And I've had a few favorable resolution letters like that, and a few dismissal letters. And there are other activists who file smaller complaints, which is probably a better approach now that I think of it, so that it takes less time for the agency to just process those complaints. And I know that hundreds of female-only programs have been opened up to the participation of both men and women as a result of these complaints. But the precedent that established all these like flurry of investigations was a complaint that I filed against USC. And again, we are coming to this San Francisco office, and why it's so difficult to get the San Francisco office to investigate an institution for bias against men. So the San Francisco office originally dismissed the complaint, and I was targeting some scholarships worth millions of dollars at the University of Southern California, as well as some female-only programs. So what happened was they quoted like an obscure dear colleague letter, which nobody has like even heard about, to dismiss the complaint, saying that scholarships from the underrepresented sex do not violate Title IX. But I argued, I mean, how can you argue that the
Right.
underrepresented sex are obviously men? So how can you argue that scholarships for the underrepresented sex are not violating Title IX? And I think the kind of tenuous logic that they were clinging to was that women are still underrepresented in a few disciplines like STEM, but overall, if you look, like they are the overrepresented sex. So it doesn't really work like that. So you can't really say that scholarships for women in STEM are, do not violate Title IX, because if you look at, let's say, the HEAL disciplines like health sciences, where women are the absolute majority, or in humanities, where again women are the absolute majority, there are no male-specific programs in those disciplines. So there's nothing that could create an overall sense of balance. So anyway, I appealed that dismissal to the Trump appointees, so to the Trump administration, and they granted that appeal. So it's one of the
Wow.
few cases where an internal appeal is granted. Like most appeals are just peremptorily dismissed. But and that precedent was established, and after that other people filed very like similar complaints. So there's been female only scholarships are slowly disappearing. They're becoming illegal. So we made a lot of progress about that. About female only, like professional clubs, for example, are also on the chopping block. Women's centers, which are like political advocacy units, so they're not medical. They shouldn't be confused with like medical women's centers, which we are not really
Mhm.
targeting. But like almost every educational institution has a women's center, which is a political advocacy unit. So we are targeting those as well. And generally speaking, allegations against those have also been accepted. And we are also challenging women's studies departments, because I've been in communication with professors who want to teach male studies classes, and with students who want to take these classes. And interestingly, there's a lot of demand for this, so which we've been able to demonstrate to the Office for Civil Rights. And now the agency, in a recent notification letter against Brown University, has accepted the argument that yes, women's studies also violate Title IX, and they've launched an investigation against Brown's Women's Center as well. So, which kind of like brings me to Stanford. So, the investigation against Stanford is actually woefully inadequate. So, out of 27 allegations, if I recall correct, only 5 allegations have been accepted. So, the San Francisco office, after all my like past struggles and all these like criticism, and with the regional director resigning from her position despite articles criticizing them, they are just still sticking to their guns and adopting a very minimalist approach when it comes to investigating colleges for discrimination against men. So the complaint against Stanford is really a sliver of what it might have been, and the dismissed allegations are actually on appeal. So we will see whether the appeal is successful, because I argued based on many reasons. Like one of them is that there are other regional offices that are treating these complaints much more charitably, whereas the San Francisco office is insisting at adopting this minimalist approach. Sorry, as well as other reasons. So we will see how that appeal turns out. And that kind of like brings me to Michelle Dober. So what happened was, after I went public with the Stanford campaign, it was first covered by Forbes, by Kim Elsesser, and then it went kind of viral. So Stanford Daily, Stanford Review, the San Francisco Chronicle all covered the story, even though, as I mentioned, it's like a very minimalist complaint. But because Stanford is kind of a big institution, which has never been, I think it has never been under investigation for discrimination against men before, and it's been years since the like Yale kind of like press coverage. So again, it generated a lot of like buzz. So what happened was, I the Stanford Daily basically posted this on their Twitter account, and it actually went viral. So there were like thousands of likes. Uh, like Stanford alumni and students were very responsive, very positive to the complaint. They were saying like, "Finally, like, where have you been all these years?" And then I saw a lot of calls against Michelle Dober, and some people actually assumed that Michelle Dober was the target of the investigation. And I just did some like very preliminary research into like what is going on, and it seems like sorry, Michelle Dober, there have been multiple complaints against Michelle Dober before for engaging in harassment against both male and female students, as well as male and female like celebrities, as well as like other people, and
Hmm.
distortion of like vital facts in some past legal cases, which I'll be touching upon in a minute. And at that time, I reached out to Stanford to ask, well, basically to request an investigation against Michelle Dober. There was a petition which collected more than 10,000 signatures against Michelle Dober, calling for her termination. And
Hmm.
there was also an article by Claire Best, who, as you previously introduced, who has done a lot
Hmm.
of immense, amazing work into exposing this Ponzi scheme of victims' rights advocates and their allies in the federal government. And I sent those links and I said, like, please investigate Michelle Dauber or I'm going to file a Title IX complaint with the Office for Civil Rights within 10 days. And I heard back from the Title IX coordinator, who is like the chief executive of the Title IX office. And he said, yes, we're going to investigate. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Hmm.
And I can actually check the date on that. Let me see.
Please.
It was on December 9, so last year. And after that time, I was introduced to Claire Best. We've exchanged a lot of emails. I've also heard back from other people who have grievances against Michelle Dober. I've heard back from Janice Fiamanga, who is a professor of English in Canada, who has done her research into how Michelle Dober distorted some legal cases. The anonymous author of a book called Collateral Damage, which explains how Michelle Dober was complicit in distorting the crucial facts in the People versus Turner case involving Brock Turner, which
Hmm.
brought a lot of publicity. Um, and I've also read like posts by I believe Susan Bassi is her name, who has done some research with a FOIA exposing corruption and collusion between the local DA's office and Michelle
Hmm.
Dober, and apparently the FBI's FBI's San Diego office, I believe, is investigating Michelle Dober for uh, like collusion, for election fraud, and for a few other offenses. And she
Wow.
mentioned, and apparently indictments will be made in February. It's
That's
a bit
next month.
hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yes, it's hypothetical, so I don't really know. This is kind of like a second-hand account,
Yeah.
but that's what I heard. I've also been in communication with Cynthia Garrett, who signed the complaint, who has done a lot of work, again, pro bono work, helping wrongfully accused male students in Title IX tribunals. So we collected like a few signatures, including from attorneys, and I submitted a complaint, a more formal complaint, to Stanford's Title IX office. And we've
Hmm.
also shared the complaint with Stanford's Board of Trustees, with the president, and with the ethics office, Stanford's ethics office. So I'm hoping for a comprehensive investigation. Of course, you never know because Dober is an influential figure. So I don't really know if the investigation will move forward, even though Stanford said that, yes, we're investigating. I don't really know if anything positive will come out of that. So it's too early to tell. And one thing that I noticed, like you're very brave, I think, because we've heard back from journalists at Inside Higher Education, from the College Fix, and from the Stanford Review, who have all covered like my advocacy before. But interestingly, they all expressed interest, but eventually they just kind of chickened out. I guess that's kind of like the correct way of putting it, because Dauber is kind of like an intimidating figure. Like she has ruined the lives of multiple people. She has issued death threats against people without facing any retaliation or punishment for what she has done. She sent mobs after Brock Turner, like anarchists with like machine rifles, like showed up at his doorstep because of Michelle Dauber's manipulations. So she's an intimidating figure, and it takes kind of like courage to just kind of like really criticize her. So thank you very
I
much for
went
having.
to Yeah, no, sorry, I had to cut you off. I didn't mean to do that. I was gonna say that I went to war with her on multiple occasions while she was still on
Yes.
Twitter. So I'll take the
Oh,
compliment.
I haven't. I'm not very active on Twitter, so I wasn't aware of that. But I've listened to your previous interviews with Claire, so I know that you've been criticizing Michelle Dover for quite some time. So I
Did
guess
you
that's
catch
kind of
the sorry, did you catch the video where I dove into her history and trying to figure out why she is the way that she is?
the one explaining her brother. Uh,
Yes, yes, that
I
one.
think so. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
please, I was just gonna
Yes. She
shout
has
it
like
out
a
to the
very
audience as well.
she has like a very personal reason for kind of like engaging in a crusade like this. uh, it's not understandable, I think, because I think she has this like worldview that all men are like her brother, and that's like judging an entire class of
Well,
people
it's
based
deeper
on.
than that. She thinks that all men are like her father, her brother, and her ex-husbands, plural. You know, like all these men that she's encountered in her life have been a certain cookie cutter pattern. So she has this lens that she has painted that if these three men that are so personal to me are like this, that means every single man is probably like that. That's how I see it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's like a summary of my involvement with Title IX. I can read excerpts from the complaint, or just like summarize what the complaint is about, if you like. But
I
that's kind
think
of very,
we're
yeah.
more interested in hearing about this most recent investigation. So the news that I broke yesterday came from both you and Claire, and I want to know, like, how did you all find out? How do you know that Stanford is investigating? What are they investigating with respect to Michelle Dauber, and where might it be headed?
So I know that Stanford is investigating Michelle Dober, sorry, because the Title IX coordinator wrote back to say that yes, we are investigating. So I can read that, um, what
Yeah,
he actually.
maybe can you share it? Can you present it on screen, or is that too sensitive?
No, it's not sensitive at all. I don't know how to share my screen, but give me a second.
No
Uh,
problem.
okay, Stanford
It should be
initially.
on the bottom. If you see that once you open it, there's this little button called present on the bottom, and then you
Okay,
can hit
give me a
share
second.
screen. No problem. No, Jillian, that's
Okay,
what
present.
police departments do. But yes, very close.
Okay, here you can kind of read, I hope, the response.
Wait,
So
hold on.
it's
Did you share it?
yes.
I don't see it. It's not presented. It would appear next to. It would be like another bubble at the bottom. I can't. It's not there yet. So if you hit present, share screen, and then select the window, entire screen, Chrome
Okay,
tab.
can you see it now?
Yes, yes, I can. There we go.
Okay, here you can kind of like see the Title IX. So I filed an initial petition. This was before I filed the more comprehensive complaint, which I can also share with you. But this was after the initial like air of publicity for the Title IX investigation against Stanford, which challenges female on the programs. And here, Stephen Chen, who is the Title IX coordinator, is saying, "Dear Mr. Pekgos, thank you for your correspondence and for letting us know about your concerns regarding Professor Dober's conduct and messages. We do take allegations of sexual harassment seriously and want to assure you that we are taking appropriate steps in response to your message. Sincerely, Stephen."
And he is the Title
So,
IX coordinator and director who
yes.
basically works under the directive of Dauber. So it's going to be interesting how on earth this man is going to be investigating it.
I don't really know. I'm not quite so pessimistic because, if I recall correctly, Stanford's president is also very critical of Michelle Dober, and I think there are people in the Stanford community who are also very much upset with like Michelle
Okay,
Dober's
good.
behavior. So it may actually go somewhere, but of course we don't really know. So we don't really know for sure like how the investigation will go. I don't know if they will even respond to my more comprehensive Title IX and ethics complaint that I filed. So it's too early to tell. But of course, it's always best to just publicize these complaints and investigations so that, because ultimately it's the people who decide, the outcome of any legal case. So the people is the ultimate tribunal. So it's always best to put this information out for the benefit of the public, so that people can just arrive at their own conclusions. So yeah, that's it.
Gotcha. Okay. So where are we now? This was emailed back to you on Friday, December 9th. Here we are almost 41 days since.
Yes.
Has there been any follow-up? Or what are we looking at? What are we anticipating, do you think?
I don't really know. So that's part of the mystery. As I mentioned, I actually took quite some time myself to file my Title IX and ethics complaint. I filed it on January the 1st, so there was like a long delay after filing the initial
Can you
complaint.
blow that up a little bit? Can you zoom in?
Yes.
It's a little, yeah. There we go. Beautiful. Thank you.
So I
So
filed
that
it
was a
on,
couple weeks ago.
yes. So it's kind of reasonable to give Stanford some time to, sorry, assess the allegations and just decide whether they're going to move forward. Um, so I'm still giving them some time, but I will send the email to check, request a status update probably next Monday to see if they're going to investigate these new complaints or whether they have already taken action against Michelle Dober for acts of online harassment against students and other people.
Mhm. All right. Well, listen, Kursat, I'm very thankful for you to having spent this time doing all of this work, first of all, and second of all,
Thank
of course, coming on my show to discuss. I know literally right before you came on, you were getting interviewed by who was it?
you.
The
A journalist from USA Today. It's about the
USA
Brown
Today.
University complaints. And actually, it has never been like broken to the public before. But as I mentioned, like right now on your channel, the Brown University is under investigation for, well, basically having a women's studies department, but nothing equivalent for men. So it's unprecedented. It was kind of like a newsworthy item. So I've been in communication with a journalist from USA Today. I don't really know if she will cover the story because it's kind of common for journalists to express initial interest and then just kind of like fade off. So it happens. Um, so we'll see. But we have made quite a few like breakthroughs recently. University of Berkeley is also under an investigation for discrimination against men. And again, the San Francisco office is kind of trying to narrow the scope of the investigation by saying that scholarships that express a preference for women do not necessarily violate Title IX. They actually do. Like the plain
Right.
language of Title IX says, any kind of sex-based preference is illegal in scholarships. But they're saying, absent any evidence of sex discrimination per se, we are not going to take action. So they dismiss like half the scholarships, allegations about scholarships, and the other half is now under investigation. So it's a slow process to be sure, and it's not always successful because, as I said, you're dealing with like people in positions of power, like educators who are very much like biased in the first place. So it's very much an uphill battle, but somebody has to do the fighting. So I guess like I'm doing the fighting. um, I'm trying to do my best, really.
Everyone keeps asking in the chat right now is if we can get a link to your petition. If you don't mind, email it to me, and I'm going to include it in the description below. If you're so kind to share that with us.
Sure. Like, I'm not the person who began the petition to have Michelle Dober fired. It was launched by a different individual. So yet
Oh
another
no!
person.
Wait a minute. That petition. Oh, I
Yeah,
probably have a link to that somewhere. I've shared it
but I can send
several
that to you as
times
well.
during the Johnny Depp trial. Yeah. But Well, I'm gonna try and get as many. It's hard to to keep up, as there are a lot of moving parts to this, and I can't.
Yes.
Not all of this information is public. I'm talking to chat right now.
Yeah.
Not a lot of this information is public. It's all still like in the works. It's working its way on in the background. So as these things come to light, obviously we're gonna be sharing that. But right now, I actually think a little bit of exclusivity is okay. You had a chance to review the email. We've shown receipts of what is being done against Michelle Dauber. I think that was one of the most important things, because when I
Mhm.
tweeted yesterday, a small minority of people I noticed were like, "We trust you, Larry, but can you show us?" Because everybody wants to see with their own eyes. So now we finally
Yeah.
have it. And if you could send me at least a copy of that email, that's really all I would like to
Yeah, sure,
share
of
with my
course.
Twitter followers as
I
well,
can
so
do that.
they're aware. But the petition and everything, again, I think in due course it will become public. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I know the people are hungry; they want to see it. But what I'm really more interested in than anything else is actual action being taken by Stanford first. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see headlines. Michelle Dauber axed from Stanford Law School due to her conduct on Twitter towards individuals, death threats, everything.
Hopefully.
That's what I want to see. And when that comes to light, well, by God, that's going to be the creme de la creme. But until then, we're going to continue working. Crusat, Claire Best, myself, a host of other people. So I just wanted to thank you for coming on, man. Honestly, it's been
My
a
pleasure.
pleasure.
And the complaint is not really like private at this time, so I can share it with you if you want to share with your audience. And I didn't have a lot of time to collect signatures, so maybe that's one aspect that is missing in the complaint. I have 7 signatures so far because I ran it through a list, but I just gave like a very short deadline, only 2 days, for people to sign and read the complaint because I wanted to file the complaint on January the 1st. So there was like little time available. So I only collected 7 signatures. What we can do is like I can send you the complaints, and if you want to share it with your audience to collect signatures, you can post it on Twitter. You can post it on YouTube. Like it's not really a private document, so I can definitely email that document to you.
Okay, sounds good. I'm just highlighting a few comments here. Oh, there we go. We got several people who said I will sign. So there you go.
Perfect.
All right. Well, Kursat, once again, thank you very much, my friend. Hopefully, we'll talk again soon.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. I actually just emailed the documents to you, so you can share them with your audience whenever you want.
Perfect. Perfect. I will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. So, a lot of bombs dropped today, and hey, I delivered. I told you guys that we had all of this information in the hopper. I just was not ready to go public with it, other than reveal the fact that Michelle Dauber is being finally investigated. And so, yeah, there you have it. I will try and get my hands. He said that he emailed it to me, so I'm going to be on the lookout for that. And then once I receive it, then I will try to make it public. Like I said, I mean, a lot of this stuff I don't know. I'll probably have to link it, and there's a lot of back channels I have to do before I can just share it with everybody. Unless I can just screenshot, like the email. I think I can just screenshot, share it on my Twitter. But I'll try and include it in the description below if I don't forget. I do have today. We're doing a twofer. It's not a threefer day, but it is a twofer day. We're doing 2 shows today. This one, which I'm about to finish up, and in about 50 minutes, Logan Paul versus CoffeeZilla. If you all have not been up with the latest crypto scam by Logan Paul, boy oh boy, you're in for a treat. And if you have not watched CoffeeZilla's breakdown, dissection, and absolute destruction of Logan Paul's crypto scam, whoo, you're missing out. I can't. Oh, is Tug in the chat? Everyone is saying hi, Tug. Oh, there he is. What's up, Tug? Yay. Look at what I have over here. I've been drinking out of your mug again. It's like everybody's saying hi, Tug. Like, what's going on here? What's up, brother? We need to do another show, by the way. It's been a while. It's been far too long. It's been like a whole month. We need to do another show. We can do it on my channel, your channel, whatever you prefer, my man. I'll be in touch. But yeah, so Logan Paul's crypto scam, I'm pretty sure he is on the SEC watch right now. I am fairly certain, even. Because the stuff that Logan has done, and like I said, we will talk about it. The rabbit hole goes deep. It goes about 6 months back, if not longer, too. And we're going to cover it in depth, start to finish, and then where it might be headed. Because for those of you who don't know what the SEC is, it's the Securities Exchange Commission. Those are the people who watch individuals who trade in crypto and stock wrongfully in violation of the law. Yeah. So you have that to look forward to. Again, thank you, Kursat, for joining us. Thank you, Tug, for popping in. Sorry, you came in literally like as we're finishing up. There he is in the chat saying, thanks everyone for the nice messages. So yeah, 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to start in about 45 minutes, and I will see you all there. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you again, Kursat. Thank you, Claire Best, on your continued efforts as well. And thank you, chat, for being here and participating and being so lively today. So I'll see you in a little bit. Take care of yourselves. Bye, everybody.